Hello everyone, welcome back to Power for Nothing, a Magic the Gathering Cube podcast. I'm your host Dan, and as always, I'm joined by James. James, how are you doing? Are you well?
I am well. It is new Magic card time once again.
Yeah, they're coming thick and fast. This week and next week, we're going to be doing our Cube set reviews for Magic the Gathering Marvel Spider-Man. We're going to be looking at all of the different products that are coming out for this. So there's the main set. There are some intro decks, and there's also some like scenic panorama cards. Either way, this week and next, we are going to be talking all things Spider-Man. But let's quickly go over how we're going to be evaluating cards today. For these set reviews, it's important to remember that we are comparing cards in this set to every card that has ever been printed before it. When we talk about cards, we're generally going to be talking about them in terms of what cubes they could see play in. We'll either be talking about them in terms of power level of cube, so you have like your vintage powered cube at the top with all the best and broken cards where things have to be quick and super efficient. And then as you go down the power level, you have your unpowered cubes, your more mid-powered cubes like Legacy and Modern cubes. Things start getting a bit slower, and then you end up with your more entry-level cubes and your budget cubes, where things don't have to be as fast, they don't have to be as broken. You can run cards that need a bit more time to do their thing. We'll also maybe talk about sizes of cubes. The rule here is that the larger the cube is, the more you're looking for multiples of the same effect. So if we say a card could see play in a 540 or a 720 cube, we're saying that there's probably a better version of this card out there, but if you want multiples, then you could look at running it as well. We'll also shout out where relevant if the cards we're talking about we think could make a splash in Peasant, which is a cube made up of commons and uncommons, or Pauper, which is a cube made up of just commons. For what it's worth as well, me and James both own our own cubes. James has a very high-powered vintage cube, and I have an unpowered vintage cube, which is a little slower and lower powered than James, but still runs most of the broken cards. And I have the Treat Yourself cube, which is a lot slower and is trying to do bigger, more impactful things, but later in the game. So if we mention our own cubes, that's what we'll be talking about. But one last thing before we jump into the set review, let's actually talk a bit about some of the mechanics. There are two new shiny mechanics that are featuring in the set. James, this one seems quite flavorful and a good place to start. Talk to us about web slinging.
Yeah, for sure. So web slinging is an alternate casting cost. So the example card we've got here is Spider-Man Web Slinger. This is 2 and a white for a 3/3. And it has web slinging for a single white. So to cast it for its web slinging cost, you can pay white instead of a normal 2 and a white. If you also return a tapped creature you control to its owner's hand. So tapped creature, we need to, most of the time, be able to attack with one of our creatures to get a tapped creature. And then post-combat, our creature needs to survive through combat. We can return the tapped creature to our hand and cast our Spider-Man for its web slinging cost. So this is, you can kind of think about the enablers for this, similar how you would think about the enablers for something like ninjutsu. You need evasive creatures that are going to get in and survive combat. But the difference is here, we can pay our web slinging cost in our second main phase because it's not a activated ability. We're not ignoring timing restrictions here. Having said that, there's some upside here. Like, you are actually casting the spell. So if you get any triggers from, when you cast a creature spell, something like that, those will trigger here. But also, you can counterspell a spell cast to its web slinging cost.
That's pretty cool. I didn't actually realize that. Yeah. I think you mentioned something in the middle of that, which I think kind of summarizes it pretty well. This is like a fixed modern ninjutsu. In terms of kind of like how it will play. It is at sorcery speed, as you mentioned. Generally, it will play like ninjutsu, I think, most of the time, but there are some cool ways around it, like if you can find other ways of tapping your creatures, so like crewing vehicles or crewing stations, I guess, are ways of are ways of activating web slinging. Like things like mana dorks will tap themselves. If you can find a mana dork that generates the mana, there is a world where you can tap it, return it to your hand, and use that mana to pay for the web slinging cost.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's quite a good one, actually, right? Because the stuff that costs web slinging free can be a pretty powerful card. And if you can go turn 1 mana dork, turn 2 web slinging for free, that seems like a really powerful card.
Definitely, I think there's there's definitely some cool things you can do with web slinging. I think it is called something slightly different on Modo. So if you're playing this in the Mitgo Vintage Cube, it will be something else because web slinging is tied up in the IP is a fair way of putting it.
Yeah, we are not doing a Crossing the Omen Paths set review or whatever that nonsense is called.
we did have a conversation of do we do one or the other, or do we do both? But we're just doing the ones that are printed in paper because those will be the ones I will be playing with anyway.
The Omen Pass cards I find really funny because they're just a core set, but then they've had to try and justify why half of the cards are inexplicably spiders.
Yes. I think that they've spiders and humans.
Yeah. I liked one of them where it was like a spider and a dude who are having a fight over a kite. And that was how they justified a spider human with flying.
That's it. Love it. Yeah. I mean, when it's Marvel money, they'll find a way to make it work. But I think
you've got a feel for the people in that design team, though, don't you? Because there can't have been much budget for the Omen Paths, the Omen Paths designs.
But either way, I think web slinging, it seems like an interesting mechanic with a lot of play. I like with most mechanics, it will depend on the cards, but we do have a couple with web slinging in today's set review we're going to be looking at. The second mechanic we wanted to touch on is Mayhem. And this is one I'm particularly hot on. But James, do you want to talk to us about Mayhem a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So for example card here, we've got Spider Islanders. This is 3 in a red for a 4/3. But it has Mayhem for 2. So again, this is an alternate casting cost. You may cast this card from your graveyard for its Mayhem cost. If you discarded it this turn, timing rules still apply. So this is very much a sort of updated version of Madness. You discard the card, you can cast it this turn, same as with Madness, but you're casting it from your graveyard. So Madness you normally cast from exile, and timing restrictions still apply. It doesn't automatically go on the stack when you discard it. You discard it, it goes to your graveyard, then you can cast it for the remainder of the turn using the normal timing restrictions of Magic. I think this is a very nice implementation. I understand there's some I guess there's some gotcha things, which is why they maybe didn't want to just do Madness again, and this mechanic seems pretty good. The only thing that is kind of a feel bad for it to me is because it's so similar to Madness, but then there's a bunch of cards which call out Madness specifically. Stuff like the Rakdos Legend, where you untap it when you play a Madness card.
Angie,
but then don't trigger off your Mayhem cards, which is kind of annoying, right? But in general, I think this is a very nice implementation. Also, interesting thing about how they've done it this time, does trigger your Insidious roots.
I was wondering how quickly we would mention that, but that's pretty hot. Yeah. Similarly to how web slinging is like a modern day fixed fair version of ninjutsu, this is the modern day fixed fair version of Madness. And I don't actually think it's not a case of Madness is strictly better or Mayhem is strictly worse. They will play similarly, but they are different. Like it's not just Insidious roots. Mayhem will trigger a lot more than you think. There's a lot more cards nowadays that care about things leaving your graveyard than necessarily being cast from exile, which is quite nice. So Mayhem will work with just. I think we'll find it will work with a lot more things just naturally. And one of the other reasons I'm really high on it as a mechanic anyway with Mayhem is because Madness I think is quite high on Marrow's Storm scale of mechanics that they don't reprint that often. It has to be in a world it's what we always see it in Innistrad, because there's the element of it works with the setting, but just it's a mechanic that they don't like bringing back because it does muck around with the rules of Magic. Being cast into exile and ignoring all timing restrictions is something they have to be very careful of. They've really not been printing cards for the Madness deck for quite a while. You see them very rarely, and red black Madness I think is a fantastic archetype for peasant cubes and for lower powered more budget environments. It is a really fun deck that just really hasn't got that much love in the last couple of years. And the thing is, Madness will still work with most of the enablers in that deck, like all the discard outlets, everything that's kind of putting the Madness cards into the graveyard. Mayhem will still work with that. It's just sorcery speed. But if the cards are powerful enough, they can still get in despite that fact, basically.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a cool one. It's we will just gradually figure out there's a bunch of stuff that hates out one and not the other, right? Graveyard Hate is effective against Mayhem, doesn't do anything against Madness. Madness always had the issue where 3 mana Teferi stops you madnessing your cards.
Oh, that
Mayhem, Mayhem gets around that, which is nice. Yeah, no, I think it's a good implementation for sure.
No, definitely. I think this is kind of my fault. I think I'm making James talk about quite a lot of the Mayhem cards that have been printed in this set, but when we are talking about it is primarily, I'm going to get this out of the way now. If we're talking about a card with Mayhem, if we don't mention it, it's primarily for that existence in like a deck that already exists, basically. It is to kind of go in that archetype, but I'm very hot on it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, James, that's all our preamble out the way. Do you want to take it away with our first card of the day?
For sure. So, first card of the day is the first card I don't really know how to pronounce. I'm going to go with Arachne Psionic Weaver.
Surely it's Arachne.
I mean, okay, fine. That does make more sense.
I'm taking a punt there. I am... Actually, no. I'm saying that with confidence. If I'm wrong, roast me in the comments.
I didn't really think about the spider angle. Everything's a spider in this set. Okay, we'll try that again. First up, we're going to go with Arachne Psionic Weaver. This is 2 and a white for a 3/3 legendary creature spider human hero. It has web slinging for a single white mana. And as Arachne enters, look at an opponent's hand, then choose a card type other than creature. Spells of the chosen type cost 1 more to cast. Okay, so a lot of text. I think the fundamental thing that is going on is pretty good here is that this is a 3/3 that you can web slinging for 1. It is just a lot of stats for 1 mana, and that triggered ability is no joke. It's listen, it's not going to be great against every hand, but some hands the text will line up really well, and even when it doesn't, the information can be very, very important. I'm not really thinking about this card in terms of like ninjas and evasive creatures. I'm more thinking about this card in terms of I have a bunch of Savannah Lions, and on turn 2, I return my 1-drop. I attack for my 1-drop, return it, cast this, and then recast my 1-drop. Like that seems like a really good start to me. The taxing thing is like not always going to be great, but there will be like a lot of hands where they have 1 important, fairly expensive non-creature spell. Like imagine you cast this and you see a Wrath, right? And that taxing axe is amazing, right? It pushes that sweeper from turn 4 to turn 5. That can be the difference between them getting to cast it or them being dead. And even when it doesn't line up like that, you get the information. The information is really good. It's unfortunate that it can't name creature, but I'm kind of picturing this in a very creature heavy deck anyway, so you probably don't want to name it that much. I think this card's really solid. It's probably not like, there's so much competition for these white weenie creatures that it's probably not getting there in Powered Cube, but I think in a lot of cubes it's pretty nice. And it does do the value thing later on still, that if you have a tapped creature with a good ETB, then it gets to return that and you get to redo the ETB, and that's nice as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with all that. I think in higher power level cubes, there's just more efficient options in terms of killing your opponents. And if you want to run something that kind of mucks up your opponent's hands, I think something like Elite Spellbinder is just kind of a little bit best in class at the moment because it's a 3-powered creature as well, but it also has flying, so the evasion's quite nice. I do like this card though. Like I would agree maybe in lower powered level cubes, because like one thing with this is like white is a color you do often see in like Flicker and Blink decks. Web slinging back a creature with a good ETB back to your hand can be quite solid. You can get your value again when you recast it. That's not nothing. Also in lower powered level cubes, white tends to run creatures that tap things down. That could work quite nicely with this. Tap down their creature, then put this creature in. That's quite nice. And yeah, I do think the information part of it might secretly be kind of actually one of the better parts of it, just knowing what your opponent's up to. Yeah. I don't think this is going to see its way into like the Miko Vintage Cube, but there's plenty of cubes where an effect like this is going to be pretty solid.
One card which is in a ton of cubes and works really well with web slinging, Loran, the 2 and a white Reclamation Sage, where you can tap it to have both players draw a card. That's like a powerful ETB that you want to recur, but you can just tap the creature. You don't have to get it into combat. So you can just sorcery speed on your turn, first main, you tap that, return it to your hand, web slinging this guy out, recast Loran, blow up another thing. That seems pretty nice.
Nice. Yeah. There is definitely some, there's a lot of cool play to web slinging, and yeah, that little combination seems quite nice. Right, let's keep it going. We have a Spider-Man. We have the Spectacular Spider-Man. It is a 1 and a white for a 3/2 legendary creature Spider-Human hero. With Flash, it has 1 generic. Spectacular Spider-Man gains flying until end of turn, and you can pay 1 generic and sacrifice it. Creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So I think this is actually quite a push card. Like, it's a nice above rate body. The Flash is a nice ability. It lets you trade up in combat if you do want to get rid of something troublesome as it's coming at you. Or you can hold up counter magic or removal on your opponent's turn. If they don't do anything, cool, you can be mana efficient and put in a threat to attack with next turn. That's quite nice. You'll, in a white aggressive deck where you're coming up quite quickly, you will have the mana to push some damage through, which is good. And the last ability to protect your whole board, like, we know we're strong. Like, Selfless Spirit is a card that sees play in cubes, and that in white weenie decks, that is one of the strongest cards because it is the thing that protects you from that board wipe. Like, it's normally your opponent has to answer that card before they can answer the rest of your board. And what's nice about this is that because this has Flash, like, it is a Selfless Spirit that you can do at instant speed for 3 mana in response to your opponent running out the board wipe. That's quite nice. That is like effectively that kind of protection out of nowhere. Like that's something we can run in cube. Like there's a bunch of spells kind of like Teferi's Protection that kind of like, and like Heroic Intervention that like you could run and protect your whole board, but that's all they do. Whereas this is also a 2 mana 3/2 that can kill your opponent if it needs to be a creature that can swing through for damage. My gut is that kind of like at the moment we probably just swap Selfless Spirit to test for this for a little bit, and then we see which one we like more. But this is very pushed. I think this is quite a strong card.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's pretty close, which is better between this and Selfless Spirit. Like, the Flash is really big, right? Because Selfless Spirit never actually counts as their sweeper, right? Because it just means they have to find a removal spell before they cast their sweeper. This, because it has Flash, they don't know it's coming. It will sometimes actually stop their sweeper, which is pretty good, and you can get some good blowouts. But the downside is, right, that when you curve Selfless Spirit into a 3-drop, they can't point the removal spell at the 3-drop. When you curve this into a 3-drop, you're tapped out and they can kill the 3-drop, right? So I do think it's close. I think, but I think it's a powerful card and certainly worth trying.
But anyway, that was our first Spider-Man, James. Do you want to take it away with our first Green Goblin of the day?
Yeah, for sure. So next up we have Norman Osborn. This is... Oh, there's so many words on this card.
Sorry, James.
Okay, so this is a modal double-faced card. So you can cast it on either one of the 2 sides. The first side is called Norman Osborn. It is 1 and a blue for a 1/1 legendary creature human scientist villain. Norman Osborn can't be blocked. Whenever Norman Osborn deals combat damage to a player, he connives. So if you don't remember that, that's the you draw a card, then you discard a card. If you discard a non-land card, then you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. But unlike all the other modal double-faced cards they've printed before, this one, once it's in play, you can actually transform it from one side to the other. So in this case, you can also pay 1 and a Grixis, so 1, a blue, a black, and a red, to transform Norman Osborn into the other side, which is a Green Goblin. But you can also spend the same amount of mana, 1 and a Grixis, to just cast the Green Goblin straight up, if that's what you want to do. So the Green Goblin is 1 and a Grixis for a 3/3 legendary creature goblin human villain. It has flying and menace. It says spells you cast from your graveyard cost 2 less to cast. That's an exciting line of text. And each non-land card in your graveyard has mayhem. Its mayhem cost is equal to its mana cost. So again, that's if you discarded it this turn, you get to cast it from your graveyard. Oh, that was a lot of words. This card's phenomenal, though. This card's really, really powerful. Spoiler alert, I think this is the best card in the set. Lutral Core is like not a terrible baseline, right? 1/1 unblockable loot when you hit them. But this just has so much upside over that. Firstly, like growing your unblockable threat is already just great. But because of this isn't the sort of transform where you exile it and it comes back, this you just transform it. So you get to keep all those counters when you transform it.
That is quite nice, actually.
Yeah, and it transforms into this flying menace beater. You can hit them, get your loot, then transform it, and then the card you discarded that turn now has mayhem and costs 2 less. Or if you have another way to discard cards, you can just cast the Grixis side of this right away, and that's a great little engine on its own, right? You if you have the backside with another looter, every card you loot away, you're going to cast from your graveyard with a really big mana discount. You can also do some random combo stuff with like an Underworld Breach. That sounds great.
Yeah, I was going to say, stuff like Underworld Breach and Yorgmoth's Will must go quite hard with this card.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, like crack your Lion's Eye Diamond, play it with this and play. Yeah, there's really nothing bad to say about this card, and the front side coming down for just 2 mana is a really great deal. The other really nice thing about it is it's a good reason to cut Suspicious Stowaway, and then you get to have one less day-night card in your cube.
I cut that.
It is really good, though. Like, if it didn't say day-night on it, it would be sick. And this is really good and doesn't say day-night.
I think we were at the point where there's a bunch of where there's enough good versions of these where if we just wanted to not run that, there's Malcolm, there's Kitzer, there's other mythics about. But I think that this card is also incredibly pushed, and like I don't think you can just freeball this in a cube, though. I do think you need ways of filling up your graveyard at least a little bit. You either need ways of discarding stuff so you can play them with mayhem, or you need some kind of enabler to actually let you cast cards from your graveyard. Like this doesn't really do much with just like a Grixis control deck, for example. I think you need things like Faithless Looting. I think you need and a lot of cubes will have the basic bits like they'll have a Faithless Looting. The more powerful cubes will have an LED and an Underworld Breach. But I do think you might. My gut is with this kind of stuff, you need like a couple of looters. You need some other ways of getting the most out of this, because if like in a world where you don't curve this out or I don't play it on turn 2 and then flip it on 4 and kind of do the connivey stuff, I think you do need a way of actively putting stuff into your graveyard to get the most out of this card. That would be my one fear, because if you're playing this, like if you draw this later in the game and you need to get something down to stabilize, the backside is a hard to cast under-costed creature. That is a downside. I still think this card is very pushed, and like the potentials with this card is insane, but I do think it needs to be in an environment that has bits that will support it.
I just think the front side's pretty good on its own. Like, the fact that your unblockable looter grows as you loot seems really good to me. I don't know, like obviously you want to be able to flip it, but I could certainly imagine decks where I'd play this card even if I don't have the mana to flip it, you know?
No, that's fair. I think for me that like it's just when I was looking at the front side, like there is just so many options at 2 blue if you just wanted the looter variant. Like for me,
Sure.
If I'm putting this in my cube, it's because the backside exists and I want someone to do it. Like for me to put this in, because also this is not going to be a cheap Magic card to buy, is the other part in my head. And like I mentioned Kitzer, I mentioned like there's also cards like Ledger Shredder, there's Jace Vryn's Prodigy. I think these are kind of like just on the front side, those are comparable, and I think maybe slightly better in my opinion anyway. But like I think because this only does grow if you discard a non-land card, so you do have to put a spell in the bin. It's not like Kitzer or like other looters where you can draw a playable spell and bin a land. For this to grow and be better, you do need to be discarding like a real spell. So for me, if I'm including this, it's because I want the backside to be a thing. Because I'll be honest with you, the backside is cool. So I kind of like if I'm putting it in, I want it to be supported because I want people to get to flip it.
Yeah, for sure. I just think that your cube has like quite a lot of ways to discard cards without trying, right? And like, sure, like this gets a lot better if you have a few of those in your deck. But I kind of think if you have like even one of two of those in your deck, like I kind of think the front side of this is sort of as good as something like Kitzer. I think Kitzer, like, I think it's not as good as Malcolm if you're just on the front side. Malcolm's really powerful, but I think compared to like Kitzer or Ledger Shredder, I kind of just like this more. And the and sure, like sometimes you just want to discard lands and that's fine, but then it's still doing what you want it to do, right? It's doing your filtering. But when like your hand lines up in such a way where you are discarding spells, this is growing, it's becoming a real unblockable threat. And then, you're just gonna flip this and it's gonna be like a 6/6 flying menace. And that's gonna be really good, Like I know that you necessarily need the synergies. Like, obviously, if I have this in my deck, I'm like on the lookout for getting more discard if I can. But I don't think it doesn't seem essential to me for running this card.
Okay. No, I think that's fair. Quick rules question for you, James. Sorry, this is going to be a bit of a curveball. I'm assuming this works with the card Bring to Light as we want it to. So Bring to Light is 3 and a Simic for a sorcery that basically lets you tutor. For a creature, instant or sorcery with mana value less than the number of colors cast to spend it. There's a thing that was in Vintage Q for a while where you could go and find the front side of Valky, but play the back side as an MDFC as a Planeswalker. Is that a thing you can do? Does that work with Norman Osborn and Green Goblin? Can I cast Bring to Light, go tutor up the Norman Osborn side, but cast the Green Goblin side?
You can, yeah. I believe that will work. Although in reality, like, there's a good chance you could get to 4 colors anyway, and yeah, but yes, no, that does work.
Yeah, maybe not something specifically for this one, but like there are a couple more MDFCs we're going to be talking about today, which some of them have higher mana cost than 4, so might be a thing with
for
those.
sure. No, it's a good shout.
All right, marvelous. All right, we're moving on to black next. Next up, we have Gwenom Remorseless. It is 3 black for a 4/4 legendary creature symbiote spider hero with Death Touch, Lifelink, and one hell of an ability. It says, whenever it attacks, until the end of turn, you may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may play cards on the top of your library. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. So creature-wise, this is a little underpowered in terms of cost per stat point of view. The Death Touch is nice, but that package isn't really why we're here. We're here because effectively this is a Bolas's Citadel on a creature, and that's kind of rad. It being a creature overall, I think we'll probably agree is a downside. Like, yes, you can reanimate it, you can blink it, you could unearth it, that kind of stuff, but it does die to a Doomblade, it does die to any removal, board wipes, all this kind of stuff. As a combo piece, Bolas's Citadel is probably a bit more protected, but just having more could be a reason to do it. Bolas's Citadel, as we've kind of learned from the last couple of years, is a very powerful magic card. Like, using life as a resource is incredibly strong. Just being able to just rip through the top of our deck, play spells, spend life for free, cast spells is very, very strong. Especially if you have ways of manipulating the top of your library, like a fetch land or something like that, so you can shuffle away and keep going with spells. The obvious downside is that I've definitely won games where my opponents have been too greedy, which I'm always here for. On the plus side of this card, like that ability on a creature is interesting, and black 5 drops in cube is not as a competitive slot as other slots. Like, I think the only really like standout 5-drop creature we're not cutting is Overlord of the Balemark, which is also secretly a 2-drop anyway. So there is room for a card like this. My issue is just that I'm trying to work out what deck wants this. Like, in high-powered cubes, I don't think kind of like the Storm deck that was going to use Bolas's Citadel as like an engine piece wants to be untapping with a creature at any point. My gut is that this is more for lower-powered level cubes who maybe run Bolas's Citadel just for vibes, just because it's a fun card that lets you do some dumb things. Like, it's not there as a Storm win condition or a Doomsday win condition. It's there because it's cool and lets you have some explosive turns. Maybe that's where this has a place. Yeah, that would be kind of be my gut with this one.
Yeah, for sure. I think this card is really fun, and it will have some really good moments, whether it is good in the aggregate sense of how much you win when you draft it, I think remains to be seen. I think if your plan is to just tap 5 mana and cast it and hope you untap with it, it will, when you untap with it, it will be really good. Because it's nice that it doesn't even need to survive combat, right? Yeah, you get in there, you gain your 4 life in your second main phase, you still have this ability. And they had to block, and they actually had to lose a creature to block it because that's Death Touch, which is cool. But that's not what I'm really excited to do with it. What I'm excited to do with it is, do you know what I mean if I say tin fins?
Why is that name familiar? Explain it to me, James. What are we doing?
So sort of like if you mash together a Reanimator deck and a Storm deck, right?
Okay.
And normally what you're trying to do with it is Shallow Grave a Gristle or reanimate in some way a Gristlebrand.
Right. Oh,
gain your life. You draw a bunch of cards. You find ways to make mana, whatever it is. You keep going. And you win that turn. You storm off. This is a card that you can Shallow Grave and Goryo's Vengeance and all those things, and then you don't have to untap with it. Yeah, and then you can do your storm shenanigans.
Okay, so there is a storm way of winning it then, but if you're doing the instant speed effects because it gives them haste when they come in.
Exactly. Right, I'm way more interested in this card if it has haste, because I think it kind of sucks if you're just passing the turn, right, most of the time. But if it has haste, I'm kind of interested, and that sounds really cool. I don't know if that's it's certainly worse than Gristlebrand at that role. But maybe it's a bit of redundancy for that if you want to try and push that as a little bit of a strategy. And it does. There will be draws where it's great, especially if you can find top, and then top just gets you all the way through your deck, right? And you get the 4 life. I don't know. It seems. I think it's cool. I don't know if it's good. It probably isn't in most cubes, but I'm excited to try, No,
that is kind of hot, actually. I didn't think, it being a backup Grizzlebrand is quite nice. And, that is... Most people, when they think of Grizzlebrand, do think of it as the... it's the Reanimator payoff. It's the sneak attack payoff. Not so much the combo payoff, but there is the part of Grizzlebrand that says pay life to draw cards. That's very strong, especially in the Storm deck, because we know that kind of, mana and card draw is 2 things that the deck really needs, and Grizzlebrand will sort that out. So Gwenum being a nice little backup for that is quite hot. I was definitely struggling to see where this fit, but I think that could be quite hot. I also definitely remembered why I forgot Tin Fins. I think I tried it in Modern once. I proxied it. I was rubbish at it. I was like, well, I'm burning this.
That's fair.
But no, very, very hot. All right, what do you think of our next card, James? What do you think of Swarm, Being of Bees?
This is such a weird card to be legendary to me, why does this need to be legendary?
So for Pauper, it is miserable this is legendary. For Cube, I'm fine with it. It doesn't matter for me.
Sure, that's fair. Okay, so Swarm, Being of Bees is, I guess, a dude made out of bees. He is 2 and a black for a 2/2 legendary creature insect villain. That's flash, flying, and mayhem for a single black mana. I think this is pretty good if you have enough discard outlets. You've got to be pretty about discarding cards to want this, right? Because it's 2025. We can't be over here casting Windrakes. I don't care if they have flash. But if you're really motoring with discard outlets, and that is, that can't just be a little package in your cube, I think that has to be a very, an archetype that you are fully supporting. But if that is the case, I think this is pretty good. Because 1 mana 2/2, and it's better than 1 mana 2/2, right? Because it gave you a thing to discard that didn't cost you a card. And 1 mana 2/2 flying is very powerful. The flash is nice as well. It lets you, it lets you sandbag and discard when you want to discard on their turn if you prefer that. I like this card if you're really committed to the discard thing. I wouldn't go near it otherwise.
100%. Yeah, like why I wanted to add this list, because effectively this is effectively, this is actual fixed madness, because this allows you to get around the timing restrictions like Madness does, because it's got flash, which is hot. This is like, they have shown me this templating. Give me the Modern Horizons version of this card at some point, please. But like, I'm glad that this exists. And yeah. You are completely right in terms of the deck it goes into is not or this probably isn't getting into most cubes with rares, if I'm honest with you, unless you're like very friendly in terms of like it's in terms of what your archetypes are. Like a card that already exists that does see a bunch of pauper play, where this might see like effectively this is the 5th and 6th copy in those decks, is Kitchen Imp. That's a 4-mana 2/2 imp with flying haste and madness for a black. Like effectively what Swarm Being of Bees and a bunch of other mayhem cards in the set are allowing it to be is like I see this as like a very good peasant archetype. I think there's a bunch of cool cards from this set that will really go in there, and like some cubes with rares potentially, but I think it will struggle from a power level point of view. But just like in a cube with commons and uncommons, I think this is a really good card.
Yeah, we can like obviously not like super high power level cubes, but I think for sort of mid power level cubes, if you're leaning into a discard thing, like I saw you put Reckless Worm into your cube, Dan, and this card's a lot better for Reckless Worm, you know?
But Reckless Worm is so much bigger, James. It's a 5/4.
This card costs 1 mana.
I know, but and for anyone listening, I would like to make it clear, I put Reckless Worm in at least before Modern Horizons 2. It's also only a 4/4 now. I'm looking at the card, but that is what there is some context. It has been in my cube, in fact, multiple times, as has Arrogant Worm, but it not when Modern like from. Yeah, I don't think Minsk and Boo, for example, ever crossed paths with Reckless Worm. It was close, but they didn't overlap.
Yeah, see, they never expect it when they cast their Minsk and Boo, they attack, they leave it open, and end of turn, you madness in a Reckless Worm and kill the Minsk and Boo.
Exactly.
Oh.
Nice, but yeah. I like Swarm of Bees. I think it's a cool card, but I think it's kind of like it's showing, it's kind of nodding the hat to the fact that we can see mayhem again probably, and this is a kind of direction they can go with it. So yeah, I do like this card. All right, it's my turn to read a long one now, James. Next up, we have Gwen Stacy. We're moving on to red. It is a 1 and a red for a 2/1 legendary creature, human performer hero. That's a new one. When Gwen Stacy enters, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as you control this creature. And for 2 and a Jeskai, you can transform Gwen Stacy, activate only as a sorcery. The other side, because this is an MDFC, is Ghost Spider, which is also 2 and a Jeskai for a 4/4 legendary creature spider human hero with flying, vigilance, and haste. It has the abilities: whenever you play a land from exile or cast a spell from exile, put a +1 counter on Ghost Spider. And it also has remove 2 counters from Ghost Spider, exile the top card of your library, you may play that card this turn. So again, like the Green Goblin, this is a card that we can play for the front side and flip it, or we can play it for the back side later on in the game if we have the mana. So let's break it down. So the front side first, we do like the kind of impulse card draw. It's the way that red is kind of getting card advantage nowadays. But as a 2-drop, this does line up very badly compared to some of the other things we have out there. Like, would I want this? Like unlike the Green Goblin, which kind of, there was a conversation, I thought, at least in terms of where it stood power level wise. Like Gwen Stacy looked like the front side of Gwen Stacy compares really badly to something like Inti, for example, a similar kind of threat that goes and gets bigger. So I actually don't want to run this at all for the front side. I'm only here if the back side is worth it personally. And body-wise and stats-wise, it is an annoying attacker. 5 mana, 4/4 flying, vigilance, haste is nice. But unlike the Green Goblin, where there are more things naturally in a cube and you can add them more easily, ways of discarding and getting ability and casting things from your graveyard to really get the most out of the mayhem, I think you're going to really struggle to get the most out of this card in a cube deck. Like we just don't have the spells that are naturally in it in our cube. It's going to need a lot of support. Like playing lands from exile, casting lands from exile, like it comes up, but it's not as free as discard. It's not as incidental as well. Like we would have to support it. And like at that point, what are we really supporting? Like a 5 mana beater in 3 colors. If we want that, I could just run like Mantis Rider. If I wanted a Jeskai beta that can come down and deal some damage. I'm going to say it, James. I think I'd rather run Lightning Angel than this card. I think this is one more for Commander. I'm open to being wrong on this, but kind of, what's your take? Like people, this was one where on the Cube Discords and Reddits, people were quite high on in terms of testing. I personally don't see it, but I'm open to being wrong. What do you think of Gwen Stacy, James?
I think Lightning Angel's sick, and I want to put it in a cube.
Let's go.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting card. I agree. I'm not that fussed about the playing lands from exile and getting counters on it part of this card. I don't think that, like, it will come up sometimes, but I don't think it's a big part of this card. I think I am quite a lot higher on the front side than you, though. So if we compare this to something like, say, Abbot of Kerrol Keep is a card that has seen quite a lot of cube play, right? This, sure, it doesn't have prowess, but it gives us the card. We don't have to play the card right now, right? It's worse than draw a card because they can kill it and then we don't get the card, but it's not that much worse than draw a card. And because, if they point removal spells at this, we're probably fine with it a lot of the time, right? So it's like a 2-mana value creature that gets us a card most of the time. And then later in the game, if we don't have much else to do with our mana, we can flip it into like a pretty good, hasty, evasive threat. I think that is enough that I'm interested in running this. It's not busted or anything, but it's I think it is a nice combination of cheap value creature that you can sink mana into to be a threat later in the game.
That's it. So you're saying the flip more like monstrous or something like that. It's a thing you activate to just make the creature, like the cheap value creature you were already going to play, just better and kind of give it like it's kicker. That's what. Sorry.
Exactly.
Kicker,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you get to like turn 5, turn 6, like your 2/1 isn't doing anything anymore, right? So this will just feel like you cast a decent, tasty 5-drop, and you get that sort of for free on your value creature. I think that's pretty good.
But so with all these MDFCs, like we are also assuming that. So with this one more than the last one though, are you assuming like you need to make the mana work in your deck to be able to flip this? Are you running this in a deck where you don't have the ability to splash like one of the colors, like white or blue?
I think it's kind of mediocre if you can't splash it. Like, it's not unplayable, right? 2 mana, 2/1, exile the top card, you can play it. I think that's fine. I don't think it's super exciting though. But with the, I think, but if you can make the Jeskai, and you don't have to, the thing is, right, because it's a late game thing though, you don't need to be very good at making the Jeskai early. Yeah. Like, you can be a blue-red deck, and generally there's enough lands in cube that if you're looking out for them, you can pick up a couple of white fixing lands, right, and get from your deck.
A triome or a way of making a treasure, like in your deck, like that. That would make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah. I guess, but with both these MDCs, I have looked at them a bit too much on like, what is the engine? How am I doing it? Type thing. Where just if the front side can get in a deck because it's a good enough creature to get in a deck, then that's at least a base level that you're kind of fine with.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for Green Goblin, the engine part of it is real. This card, I don't think the engine part of it is that real. But yeah, I think the card on its own is sort of fine. The other thing that's worth flagging up with these is it says sort of it's telling you there's 2 modes, right? Casting the front half and casting the back half. There's sort of secretly a third mode if you have loads of mana where you cast the front half to get your card, and then immediately flip it to the back half because you want to attack with it right away. There's a 7-mana play, right?
Okay, yeah. I don't. Yeah. If you have the mana late game, it is a nice. This is a decent like payoff. Like it is a bit annoying that kind of like you don't. It doesn't. It's not a self-perpetuating engine. It doesn't put 2 counters on it. Like the Green Goblin gives you a card to play straight away if you flip it. Gwen only puts 1 counter on it, or Gwen will only give you one thing to play that turn. But
yeah, it doesn't. It never gets you to that first activation off its own card, right?
Mm-hmm. But fair, yeah. Seems like a fun card. Definitely one that we'll be seeing on the commander tables. This is a 3-color mon sometime soon. All right. This next card, James, we've kind of seen this before. Talk to us about Masked Meower.
Yeah, Masked Meower is a single red mana for a 1/1 creature spider cat hero with haste. You can discard a card and sacrifice this creature to draw a card. So basically, this is instant neonate for people who remember whatever that Innistrad set was. Except instead of menace, it has haste. I suspect that's a little bit better. Because I think you care about getting the damage in early, and then by the time you actually need for menace, often you're sort of in for sacking it anyway. But it's a tiny bit better if it is better. It's really marginal. It's kind of low power, but it gets in a few points, right? And then it's a discard outlet, and importantly, like a free discard outlet, right? If you're looking to madness cards or mayhem cards, or whatever we're calling it now, it's nice to have discard outlets you don't have to pay for, right? It's much harder to have your madness mana ready if you've already paid 2 mana to cast Tormenting Voice. With this, you can discard a card not having tapped any mana this turn. So I think it's fine. It's not a card I'm excited about, though.
No, this is very much a role player get in the deck if you're trying to support this as an archetype. Like Instant Leonate has actually seen a fair bit of cube play over the years. For people who are trying to support this discard deck, make it a thing. Goes great with your Reckless Worm, James. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, effectively, this is if you're either already running Instant Neonate, have a second one, or maybe you run 2 if you really want this to be a thing that kind of exists in your cube. This is also a common. Again, I think this is probably for the pauper peasant version where we don't have LED or LED might randomly be an uncommon. Actually, I think we spoke about this recently, but it's where the power level is a bit lower. Stuff like this is very solid. So yeah. And not the most powerful card in the world, but I think Masked Meower will have a place in a fair number of cubes. Right, ratcheting up the power level. Similar sort of deck. We have Pumpkin Bombs. This is 1 red for an artifact. It has tap, discard 2 cards. When you do, you draw 3 cards, then put a fuse counter on this artifact. It deals damage equal to the number of fuse counters on it to target opponent. They gain control of this artifact. This is a bit of a weird one, but I do quite like it. Importantly with this, you do have to have 2 cards in hand to activate this. Then I do think this has interesting play in a number of decks, and I like the play pattern of this. So go with me on this story, James. It's kind of reminiscent of something like the Initiative in that it's adding an extra gameplay element to a game, but it's all you keep track of it all on 1 card. So it adds a new kind of way of playing a game, but it doesn't involve another bit of paper and dice and stuff. It's all on the card. So what I like about this is if you're playing this in an aggro-y deck, you're fine getting some cards, giving it to your opponent. They might want to get some cards too, and then you kind of you're ratcheting up the damage. I can see is going back and forth. That could be quite fun. From a pure efficiency point of view, let's not worry about that. Do I want to give my opponents the ability to draw cards? Let's not worry about that right now. Let's just talk about the funness of this card. And I think in an aggro deck, I think this is quite solid. And if you are doing the madness stuff, this is being a discard enabler, I think is going to be very, very solid. It's quite an interesting way of discarding your cards because it kind of adds an extra element of I'm going to say fun, which I think is the correct way of doing it because fun is kind of a hard way to kind of evaluate how strong a card is. I think this could bite you in the arse quite easily, this card, but I think it adds a nice element to it. Where I think we kind of can break the symmetry is, again, if we are getting more value out of it. So if we're doing the Bandits deck, if we're doing a red adjacent graveyard deck, if we're doing Delirium, if we're getting more value out of the situation than our opponents, then I think if we can come out on top from that point of view, then I think this card can have a place. We have talked a bunch about the red discard deck recently. This is really great with a card like Evora. Put 2 counters on it with this. That's quite nice. On top of drawing 3 cards. So that's the kind of breaking symmetry that we're kind of after. If you can do that and there's a deck for it, then I think this card is quite strong. This is the kind of card I like, but I do know that kind of like in a high powered level environment, me, the red aggro player, here we go. I'm going to draw 2, discard 3. Cool. My opponent have this. Give them 3 cards to find their board wipe. Might not be the most smartest thing to do, but I think this card is cool. Yeah, what do you think, James?
I agree that it's cool. I'm a little bit unconvinced about it being good. So my concern is, right, that if we compare this to, say, Cathartic Reunion, right, which is just a sorcery where you discard 2 cards and draw 3 cards. The difference between this and Cathartic Reunion, assuming you don't like particularly care about it being an artifact, is that you've given them this artifacts, and then sure, if it goes back and forth, maybe in the long term that's good for you, but they get to choose whether that happens or not, right? If they don't want that to happen, it can just sit there. So what I see when I see this compared to Cathartic Reunion is just I gave them a choice, and giving your opponents choices is generally a really bad thing to do in Magic. But maybe there's some upside in that, like, you get to potentially discard the cards and draw the cards on a different turn than when you cast it. That's something. If you want to, pay your mayhem costs or whatever. It's also oddly amazing with exactly Goblin Welder. So come with me on a journey here, right? So
I'm ready, James. I'm ready.
Turn 1 Welder, turn 2 this, and the way this is written, right? Discarding is part of a cost, but they don't get the artifacts until the ability is resolved.
Oh, okay, we like that, yes.
So I can discard my big expensive artifact, put this ability on the stack, and with the ability on the stack, I sack my Pumpkin Bombs, get back my Bolus Assisted or whatever, and I still get my 3 cards. That's pretty good. In general, though, I don't think this card is great, and I think maybe it's better to just play like Scrapwork Mutt or something.
I know. I am fully ready to agree that this is not a correct play.
It is cool,
correct
card. It is cool.
Yeah. Vibes phenomenal, power level questionable.
Yeah. Just find opponents who are willing to play ball and just pass this around for a bit.
No, seems fun. All right. We have another Mayhem card. I'm going to get you to talk about, James. What do you think of Raging Goblinoids?
We sure do. This one's kind of cool, actually. So Raging Goblinoids is 4 and a red for a 5/4 haste, but it has Mayhem for 2 and a red. This is, if Reckless Worm wasn't already power crept out, it sure is now. So it's Reckless Worm with an extra power and haste. That's pretty good.
We do lose Trample.
We do lose Trample. That's true. But this is still a lot better, right? I think if you are really doing Madness as a thing, I don't know that it gets there in the sort of higher powered discard matters deck where you're all about your intis and your Auroras. I think it's maybe still not quite efficient enough for that. But outside of that, if you're doing like just a Madness theme in your cube, I think this is like an auto include pretty much. Like 3 mana 5/4 haste is kind of cracked. I don't know. You've got to be really building around it. You've got to have a lot of discard outlets, because in most cubes you certainly can't be out there casting 5 mana 5/4 haste. But if you have those discard outlets, I think this is pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. Like you really have to mean it to run this card. But if you are putting in those free discard outlets as enablers, you're running your Faithless Lootings, if you're doing all those bits, then I think this will have a place. And kind of like similarly to how the flash on Swarm Being of Bees was like a way around of making it being like a more like a stronger version of Mayhem, kind of like making it closer to Madness. The haste on this is at least a nod to it, because like yes, you can't do it on your opponent's turn, but you can still do it on your turn and attack straight away. So it doesn't feel as slow. It doesn't feel as like fixed or fair. It feels like, oh, if I'm doing the thing, I can at least rumble in the turn I put it down. That's quite nice. Like that feels better to me. So yeah. I'm kind of hot on. I'm relatively high on Raging Goblinoids again. Yeah, if you're doing that kind of that deck.
Yeah, the haste is good. So that means, well, if you have your survival chain going, right, you go through your Vengevine, get your Vengevine in the bin, then you go through your Lizard, get your Lizard out there, and then you Madness this out, and then you're cracking in with a 5/4 and your Vengevine that turn. That's pretty good.
Very solid. Right, moving on. I was just talking about enablers. Well, we have one. We have Romantic Rendezvous. This is 1 and a red to discard a card, then draw 2 cards. Believe this also won Best Kiss at MTV Movie Awards like 2001 or something like that, because it is the Spider-Man upside down kiss thing. Love to see it. But back to the card. These are very bread and butter in Cube. Like, even if you don't have cards that care about the direct discard, like even if you don't have the Mayhem deck that we talked about, or the Madness strategies, or like even if you're not really doing like Delirium, like card filtering in a red deck, like turning a land into like a threat late game, is really good. Like we will run those in Cube. Those are solid cards. In terms of rate as a card, this is not as good as similar effects, like Highway Robbery is a version of this effect. Same sort of speed with sorcery, but it has plot, so you can do it over 2 turns. Demand Answers is the same rate, but as an instant. But where this card is really good is that with every other version, you have to discard a card as part of the cost. With this, you do not. With this, you don't have to discard a card to draw 2 cards. If you're empty-handed, you can spend 2 mana to draw 2 cards. That's pretty good. In a red aggressive deck, emptying your hand and then casting this last to draw 2 cards is going to be really, really good. And that's on top of the general filtering that like other like that. That's on top of just the general utility that a slower deck or a control deck will get out of this card, or the reanimated deck that's looking to discard. Like those decks will still run it because of the role it fills, but it's now, I think, specifically better for aggressive decks that are just looking to empty their hand and draw some extra cards. Like, for that reason, I think this probably becomes an auto include in maybe every power level of Cube because it is a common. Would you agree with that, James, or am I going a bit too high on this one?
Yeah, but so I put the Tormenting Voice card in every set, and I always think like this time I'm not putting it in the set review, but then it's always better than the last one. So then it always has to go in. I kind of think this might be the new best one, though.
Yeah.
Like, it has always been a real issue with those cards that you top deck them when you're empty-handed and they're just dead. And this one now, it's just a straight-up draw 2 for 2 mana. I think this is pretty good. If you're running most of your other Tormenting Voices, I'd probably cut them for this. Whether you should just add it as a good card if you're not interested in the discard, maybe not. But I do think this is a pretty big upgrade for this effect. It also, as well as letting you cast it with an empty hand, it also means you don't get wrecked by a counterspell in the same way as a Tormenting Voice effect does. So that's pretty nice. Yeah, listen, there's a bunch of these effects. And, if you have some particular synergy with one of the other variants, right, like maybe the Bitter Reunion, the haste is contextually very good in your cube, or you care about having the enchantment in play, then maybe you keep playing that. But I would say sort of in the dark, this is maybe the new best in class of Tormenting Voice variants. Quite a nice printing, and interesting to see like it looks like a small change, but I think actually is a fairly big change for this card.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, very, very strong. All right, we'll get one of these for our cubes, James. All right, what do you think of the next one, James? This is our final card for the day. What do you think of Shadow of the Goblin?
Yeah, so this is 1 red for an enchantment with some abilities. The first ability is Unreliable Visions. This says, at the beginning of your first main phase, discard a card. If you do, draw a card. And the second ability says, whenever you play a land or cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, this enchantment deals 1 damage to each opponent. So in the context of this set, I guess that's mostly triggering off mayhem, but in Cube, that can certainly trigger off a lot of other things. So most of what we're getting here is we're getting a rummage every turn. That's fine, but it's, in my experience, most of what the decks that would want this effect, right? The discard matters effect decks in red tend to be trying to get on the board and attack people. And for that reason, I feel like most of them would rather have the repeatable rummaging effect on a creature than on an enchantment. This will get in for a few points over the course of the game, right? Like you cast a mayhem point card, it deals a damage. You cast a madness card, deals damage. Maybe there's something fancy you can do with an underworld breach, but let's be real, there's better win conditions. I think this. I don't think there's a ton wrong with this card, but I sort of struggle to see it ever being the best option.
No, I agree. So for me, I'm actually not here for the rummage is fine, but I am more here for the damage, and that's purely because again, this is one for slower cubes, but I think this is actually fills the role that we wanted Burning Vengeance to fill. So Burning Vengeance is 2 and a red for an enchantment that whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, this enchantment deals 2 damage to any target. That's fun, but that doesn't work with as many of effects that we run in Cube as you think it does. It's actually quite like it doesn't work with like flashback because they go to exile, like that kind of stuff. It doesn't work with unearth. This doesn't either, but that's a separate thing. But like effectively, like this covers more bases as a build around and again, this is not for the most powerful level of cubes. This is for very much kind of like we're doing a thing, or we're trying some archetypes that are a bit slower. But like in a slower cube, this is a build around, and I think it could be quite a cool win con. Like this still works with flashback, but this still deals the damage with madness, with plot, with like foretell, and any other of like the exile, cast spell later type of effects. Like that's quite nice. Like there are a couple of other cards that do similar things that could be like payoffs. Like there's the Lost and the Damned from 40k. It's an enchantment that when you do this, you make 3/3 red spawn creature tokens. So kind of like there's enough bits now where kind of like this could be like what an Is It section is doing, kind of just like casting spells from multiple places, getting value as we're doing it. Like I think there's enough for that to actually be a deck in Cube now. And again, we're not talking like we're going nowhere near the vintage Cube with this, but like I've built a bunch of like lower powered level cubes where this is like a fun thing to do, and like Burning Vengeance is a card that people like still try and cube, or like still cube with. Like Burning Vengeance is a cool card that people like, but it just hasn't, the wording of it hasn't kept up with how cards are printed nowadays. Whereas Shadow of the Goblin keeps up with kind of like how cards are printed and kind of does the thing on top of obviously being an engine as well, because it's a 2025 card.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is cool that it triggers, even like playing stuff from the top of your deck, right? Like you play a land off your Corsair and this triggers. So it's certainly going to trigger a lot more from Burning Vengeance. I'd be way more into it if you could deal damage to creatures, though. Like with Burning Vengeance, normally, like it's not like you're just going face right away, right? You actually use it to stabilize the board, and then you use it to kill them later. Because I guess my issue with this is because it's only 1 damage and it only goes face. The deck you're describing, I'm assuming, isn't very aggressive, right? We're not getting much damage in early.
It's like you are building an engine. You're building an engine with this and cards like Lost and the Damned.
Yeah,
I think like Ominous Roots is another version of this effect where it's kind of like
yeah. But kind of my point, right, is that like we're not doing 20 with this card. It's really hard.
We're doing like 7 and 8 while also filling up our bin for our other effects type thing. Like it's helping fill up and give us a bit of card selection while incidentally pinning our opponent to bring down their life total, so that we're kind of, when we do have a turn where we kind of pop off with like some of the creatures that we're making or spells that we're casting, like that's kind of where I see it basically. Like, sure. Yeah, I agree. We are not landing this and we're riding it to the end of the game. Like, we are not we're not dealing 20 damage. I think if we can do like 6, we're probably happy, I think.
Yeah. It's just the thing of like, their life total doesn't affect the game until they're dead, right? Like, it doesn't do anything to keep us alive. It's kind of my point. I think
No,
it's
I think
like,
that's fair.
if we're looking at it in a slower deck, it's I'd almost rather it was like gaining us life or something,
That's fair. No, I could see that. Just like it stabilizes you. Like, it's an engine piece that's kind of, if it's keeping you alive, you can find your other engine bits. No, I think that's fair. I think this card will see some play, and we should do an episode about this. We are doing the blue nothing cube. The whole point of that cube is to build an engine and do something with it. I think this card's actually perfect there, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, this sounds great, that cube, for sure.
Where you have time to dawdle, basically. And yeah. Basically, I'm saying this 2-mana engine, this 2-mana slow engine card can only go in a cube where you can run a 2-mana slow engine card, I think is kind of the nice way of putting it. But yeah.
Yeah, for context, I think the other card from this set that might go in that cube is the 4-mana 1/5, where you can pay 7 mana and draw 2 cards. Just to give you a context of what the cube is like.
Reasonable. No, marvelous. All right, so that's going to do it for episode 1. Make sure you all come back next week for episode 2, where we'll be looking at green, multicolored, colorless, and lands. There's still plenty of bangers from this set for us to go through. James, pleasure, man. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Wonderful. All right, everyone, we'll see you all soon. You all take care. Until next week, it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from James, and we'll see you all soon. Goodbye.